What is syntax? Simply stated, a theory of syntax is an attempt to describe the rules that govern the order of words. These syntactic theories can be used to create correct, deep structure language as well as inform and influence how English is taught. Through this presentation, we will get an introduction to English syntactic rules and investigate how knowledge of these rules can affect educators. Before delving into an introduction to the syntactic structure of the English language, two concepts must be addressed. First is the tool used to visually represent syntactic structure, the tree diagram. At first glance, tree diagrams can be daunting and may cause apprehension about learning syntactic structures. However, these tree diagrams serve as a graphic organizer that presents syntactic structure in a hierarchical, well-organized way. Many students, especially visual learners, find that they can better understand syntactic concepts once they see it represented in a tree diagram. The best strategy for creating a tree diagram is to write out the sentence first and then diagram it from the top down. This top-down approach helps to better understand the constituents of the sentence and the elements of the different phrases. Second, the concept of deep structure and surface structure sentences must be understood, as the rules and diagramming to follow apply to the language at its deep structure level, not its surface structure level. Developed by highly regarded linguist Noam Chomsky, the theory of deep and surface structure sentences addresses the ambiguity of the English language as well as the fact that there are numerous ways of phrasing one idea. According to Chomsky, deep structure is a theoretical construct that seeks to unify several related structures. Deep structure sentences are basically the blueprint of what we are saying, while surface structure refers to what we say or write. A deep structure sentence, through moving around phrases, can become an innumerable amount of grammatically acceptable surface structure sentences. Furthermore, Chomsky asserts that, as there are a limited number of acceptable deep structure sentence patterns, the task of acquiring these few basic structures and the rules governing how to properly manipulate them is much easier and more psychologically real than learning all of the possible surface structures. Now that the necessary background concepts have been addressed, we can move on to an introduction to the syntactic structure of the English language. First, we look at simple sentences. A simple sentence on the deep structure level consists of a noun phrase, an auxiliary verb, and a verb phrase. Let's look into each one of these constituents. A noun phrase consists of a possible determinant, a possible qualifier, a possible adjective phrase, a required noun, and a possible prepositional phrase. The adjective phrase is made up of a possible intensifier like extremely or relatively, and a required adjective. The prepositional phrase is made up of a required preposition like in or at, and a required noun phrase. In a noun phrase, the prepositional phrase acts like adjectives in that they describe the noun. On both the surface and deep levels, the prepositional phrase that is part of the noun phrase cannot be moved around and must follow the noun. Interestingly enough, as a prepositional phrase is optional in the noun phrase, yet a noun phrase is required by the prepositional phrase, English syntax established no length limits on sentences and could hypothetically yield an infinitely long sentence. For example, Mark Leach's Marion Bad My Love, the world's longest published novel, features a sentence that contains about 3 million words. This chart displays a number of noun phrases with each constituent signified. As you can see, only one of the noun phrases contains all 5 parts, but all of them contain a noun. Auxiliary verbs come in 2 basic forms: regular auxiliary verbs like be and do, and modal auxiliary verbs that indicate shades of meaning such as should or can. Auxiliary verbs are especially tricky as they are sometimes automatically supplied. For example, the phrase Ben ate cereal for breakfast does not appear to contain an auxiliary verb. Yet if the sentence is rewritten in deep structure form, it now reads Ben did eat cereal for breakfast. The existence of the auxiliary verb in sentences that seem to omit it can be verified by switching the sentence to the negative or to a question. For example, in the given sentence, the negative would be Ben did not eat cereal for breakfast. The question form of the sentence would be, did Ben eat cereal for breakfast? As you can see, the auxiliary verb is always present, but does not always show up in positive sentences. A verb phrase consists of a required verb and one or more optional noun phrases, prepositional phrases, and adverb phrases. The adverb phrase, similar to the adjective phrase, consists of an optional intensifier and a required adverb. Unlike in the noun phrase, a verb phrase's prepositional phrase can be moved around on the surface level. This chart displays a number of verb phrases. As you can see, only one contains all four constituents, but all four contain at least a verb. Putting together what we have learned about the phrases and constituents of simple sentences, we can take a simple sentence in its deep structure level and make a tree diagram for it. The auxiliary verb is represented by a 0 because its presence is implied. For practice, here is one additional simple sentence. Pause this presentation and take some time to diagram it on your own, and then continue this presentation for the answer. As students continue to develop their academic language skills, they begin to combine simple sentences in order to convey two ideas in a single sentence. The first step in this process is to show the possible logical relationships between two equally important ideas by combining them using a coordinate conjunction, therefore creating compound sentences. The three most common coordinate conjunctions and their functions are and, which conveys the second idea as an addition, or, which conveys the second idea as an alternative, and but, which conveys the second idea as an opposite. Here is a tree diagram of a compound sentence combining two simple sentences with the coordinate conjunction and. Triangles are commonly used by linguists in a tree diagram when they do not need to show complete detail to make a point. Beginning writers often string together their ideas with and, presenting their ideas as being equally important. As their language writing develops, students learn to subordinate one idea to another, creating complex sentences. Complex sentences are the next step up linguistically from compound sentences. Where compound sentences use coordinate conjunctions like and to combine two clauses in a way that gave them equal importance, complex sentences use subordinate conjunctions to combine clauses of unequal weight. The important ideas are placed in the main or independent clause. It is called such because it is independent and can stand as a simple sentence on its own. The subordinate or dependent clause depends or hangs from the main clause. Additionally, dependent clauses begin with the subordinate conjunction that shows the relationship between the clauses. For example, when shows a relationship of time, if shows a conditional relationship, and because indicates a cause and effect relationship. Effective writing involves deciding which ideas to emphasize and choosing the correct conjunction to show the relationship. Dependent clauses function in the same way in a sentence that adverbs, adjectives, or nouns do depending on the type of dependent clause. Dependent clauses come in three forms. As the name suggests, the adverb clause functions like adverbs, answering the same questions: when, where, why, how, or under what conditions a verb occurred. Adverb clauses begin with subordinate conjunctions like after or because. In a deep structure sentence, an adverb clause forms part of the verb phrase, but in a surface structure sentence, it can appear at the beginning or end of sentences like prepositional phrases. Adjective clauses function like adjectives describing nouns. However, unlike adjectives that precede nouns, in deep-level sentences, adjective clauses follow nouns, just like prepositional phrases. In fact, some argue that prepositional phrases are simply reduced adjective clauses. The final subcategory of dependent clauses is noun clauses. Noun clauses replace the noun phrase of a subject or object with a whole clause that starts with conjunctions like what, whatever, and that. For example, in the sentence, Juan bought whatever appealed to him, the noun clause, whatever appealed to him, could just as easily have been a noun phrase, like a giant's hat, in which case the sentence would read, Juan bought a giant's hat. To put it all together, here is a complex sentence and its tree diagram. Understanding complex sentences and the relationships they convey is an important step in becoming a proficient reader and writer. A common misconception that exists is that sentence length is inversely correlated to the readability of text, as short sentences are usually believed to be easier to read and comprehend. However, the subordinate conjunction that is removed when complex sentences are reduced to multiple simple sentences signals the relationship between ideas and indicates to the reader which ideas are more important. As a result, shortening and simplifying sentences actually makes the text harder to read and comprehend.